Here I am again in the basement. Thanks for checking out these videos. We've done 2 interviews, and this will be interview number 3. And I've had a lot of great discussions with people on Facebook to try to get a feel of who may be interested in doing some of these in the future. I don't know how fast I'll be releasing these or how frequent they'll be released in the future. I think that at first I want to make sure there's a lot of content for people to enjoy. So if they do find this channel, there's actually things for them to see. And then eventually we'll start to, spread it out over a little bit longer time. So yeah, I'm not planning on flooding 2 or 3 interviews a week. I think that might be a little much, but I have been enjoying them. So if you would like to talk animation cells with me, go ahead and do so. If you can subscribe to the channel, you can too. Just to be notified that way. And today you're going to hear from a dealer. Her name is Debbie Weiss. She's been doing it for 30 years, and she's got some great stories. Looking forward to bringing this one to you here today. All good? Oh, look at that smile. And thank you so much for doing this. I know you said you felt a little under the weather, so I'm so happy that you were able to do this here today, and I'm really excited to talk to you. Thank you, Debbie.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate it very much.
How long have you been in the animation cell business?
I've owned the gallery for coming up on 30 years, and I've been collecting for probably around 32, 33, 34.
So you first started collecting, and then right. When did you come up with the idea that, I want to get into the business of reselling and trying to get other collectors to purchase?
I was collecting for a few years, and my mom bought my first cell. I used to collect Archie comic books when I was little, and she bought me an Archie cell. I had no idea what it was. I was living in Japan at the time, in Tokyo, and she was trying to describe it. I'm like, what is this? I was like, that little piece of, I didn't know. So anyway, she bought the cell. I was like, oh, I didn't know this existed. My whole world changed. And I was trading in Wall Street at the time. I lived in London, then Tokyo, then they transferred me to New York. And I really loved trading, but I would I would have dreams about finding animation. It was just so exciting. And back then it was very hard to find people. This is before the internet. This is like find a collector's magazine and things like that. And I found there was a lot of confusion in the market. Mm-hmm. And that was roughly around the same time series cells were being introduced and limited editions. A lot of people were confused. And I thought, you know what? I'm a straight shooter and I love doing this. And I think it would be nice if I was able to share that knowledge and just point people in the right direction. Collecting, I started the gallery, and here we are 30 years later.
Yeah, animationartgallery.com is the website.
That's
and you
correct.
were telling me right before we started recording that you've been in the business long enough that your URL was too long for wonderfulworldanimation.com. So you shortened it to WWA.com.
Oh, WWA Gallery. That's right. When I first
WWA
started,
Gallery. Yeah.
Wonderful of Animation was very catchy, but too long to register, which is crazy. So that's why we have so many confusing URLs.
What was your first animation cell that you really got excited over? The one that you purchased?
Okay. The first one I purchased was from Lady and the Tramp. And what I find really interesting about animation is when I first started, I had kind of a wish list of these, 50 scenes. And I didn't realize at the time how hard that is to get an exact scene. I didn't know. And I saw this piece at an auction house that doesn't exist anymore, sadly, because they were, oh, sorry, that was a little loud. Because they unfortunately aren't around anymore. But it's of Lady and the Tramp, which is a film I like, but I wouldn't say my favorite. And Lady has turned her head and her iris slipped. She's like, to Tramp. And to me, it was just so exciting. It was the most expensive. It was a couple $1,000s back then. That was a lot of money to me. And the emotion off the piece was amazing. And what I think is interesting is that some people come to us and they want this character, that character, this scene, that scene. But there's also times, certainly in my collection and other people's collections, where you're actually buying characters that weren't necessarily on your list, but the piece speaks to you for some reason. It resonates with you.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And it's easy to get carried away. And for me, it's been more like a ladder. So you start off with some affordable cells just because you don't know what they are. And I was someone that kind of got hooked because of the Animation Legends web ads. They've been all over the place, but, you can buy, 3 or 5 cells for $25 and you buy it. And then you find out how much you like it. And here I am a couple of years later doing videos on YouTube about it. But that's the thing. Once you find that you've hit a certain price point, I find that when I find one I really like, I'm more inclined to go to that next price level and that next price level. I haven't got to the $1,000 level yet, though. But that's the thing, that initial investment that you put into the Lady and the Tramp. You said you spent, of course, that's a lot of money, a couple $1,000s. A piece like that, has it retained its value over the years?
I think that one has. I mean, a lot of people ask me, and they're, of course, very smart to be curious about retaining value, keeping value. And that's a very multi-layered question, in that, one, it matters what you pay for it in the first place, right? And two, what you can then eventually sell it for.
Mm-hmm.
And what also happens is I recommend people buy what they feel comfortable affording and what brings them joy.
Mm-hmm.
So some people come to me like, what's the best investment? I will answer that question, but I hesitate to sell on that. I don't think that's very ethical myself. So to me, if you bought a lot of, sorry, I'm losing my mind a little bit, concept art way back when, that's incredibly strong right
Mm-hmm.
now. But that's also something that's mostly for a very advanced collector. Most collectors, when they start off, they want it looking as close as possible to what they recognize on the screen and what they relate to. And as they go deeper in, drawings, concept art, storyboards, things like that, unless someone's, say, an animator or an artist, they usually like the drawings and the quote, original art that started everything.
Would you, let's just say hypothetically, if you could organize a heist, would you break into the Disney morgue with all these cells that they hold on to? People talk about this thing. It's almost mythical. Some people say it exists, but so Disney has probably a bunch of old animation cells that they're just keeping in storage, I believe. Would you ever break into a building like that and take the risk just to get a peek?
Oh, what a question. Can I shut the window real fast? Because I
Go
feel like
shut the
it's
window.
really
That's
loud.
fine.
Okay, sorry.
I really want to know if
I'm
that
making this
truly exists.
one of
It's
the
almost
more
like Area.
interesting interviews, I think. Okay.
Yeah, it's like Area 51.
Well,
Everyone has an idea what's in Area 51, and they say, "Oh, the aliens are in there, or whatever." And but they would probably just see some high tech, advanced machines and aircraft, and no aliens. But the mythical type of everything that surrounds this Disney morgue, I'm more intrigued every time I hear a story about it.
well, I've been there.
Are you
So
kidding me?
no, I'm not kidding you. I've
What
been there.
What's it
And
like in there?
so it's the building, which I cannot disclose the address, but the building you would just drive by. It doesn't look Disney. It doesn't look Mickey. It just looks like boring industrial warehouse. But oh boy, inside,
Mhm.
what they did is they allowed me to pick a scene. They go, what's a scene? And I picked Dumbo in the mother's trunk, and they pulled out a stack of drawings. I nearly lost my mind. It was, oh my God. As a collector, I mean, I've seen a lot of art in 30 years. It's hard to kind of get me excited now. I couldn't even speak. I was losing it. And then you go in and they just show you background after background from Cinderella and this and that. Everything is, just stored, and they changed the air. And it was a while. I went, I think, about 20 years ago. But it was quite the experience. As you can see, I'm still a little flustered
That's
by it.
amazing.
It was amazing. So to answer your question, I really wouldn't want to do something illegal, but I take your point as in, like, that's my holy grail. That's my excited, place to have gone. What's interesting from a collector or, gallery perspective, that art is really considered not existing, in that, we can't buy it or sell it or enjoy it or things like that. It's locked up. So for a collecting standpoint, it might as well not exist, if you see
Wow.
what I mean.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for that. So now I know it exists. And it's like the person that tries to find Atlantis learning that someone's been there. But that's amazing. So you said you have kids. Do they have any interest in animation cells?
Not really. They're still quite young. They're elementary school age. They really like the films, so they're in this kind of YouTube digital app world. So when I show it to them, they're like, oh, that's cool. What does it do? Although
Yeah.
one daughter loves Marie, so I bought her a few Marie cells, and she has those on her wall from
Oh, that's
Aristocats.
awesome. Yeah, my son will do the same thing. He'll watch some Disney shows, modern ones, but like Bluey's a popular one. He's 7 years old. And sometimes he'll pause it on the screen and he'll say, this would be a good animation cell to get. Like, no, they don't, they stopped doing that, Disney even longer, but you find some of even the ones that were in the 2000s felt late for animation cells. But yeah, so I think he understands it to a point. But once he gets older, have you ever given animation cells as gifts to see if the person would like it? And then they're like, what am I going to do with this? Because it's almost like such a niche thing in a way that you don't know if someone's going to like it or not.
I don't tend to give them unless I know someone has an affinity for Disney. So, for example, I'm the vice president of a children's charity. I know that our CEO, lives at that celebration place in Disney. So I gave him as a gift a Sorcerer Mickey drawing from 1940 because I knew that would have special meaning to him.
Wow.
So I don't like to risk it unless I know someone's already have an affinity for it.
Yeah. I tried gifting some animation cells to someone once, and they're like, all right. And I was like, oh, I was really hoping you'd like it. So it's such a hit or miss thing, I think, with some people. And I find that it's almost one of the reasons why starting this channel to talk animation cells with collectors and people that have, experienced and loved it over the years is that you find with your friends and family, you can bring it up to them and their eyes glaze over. They don't care. Like, you have to find someone that really cares about this sort of thing. And it's interesting because it seems like over the last couple of decades, there's been ebbs and flows of people that have been interested in it. It seems like Disney being one of the main drivers of that when, the 80s and 90s, and people started looking at the value in, reselling them. But other, like in the 90s, the Nickelodeons and the Cartoon Networks and all these other networks that started to like sell them in mass to fans, and they realized there was some value in these as opposed to, these throwaway pieces of the celluloids or whatever. But I don't know if that's ever came back, I almost feel like I'm late to the game in a way. I only started collecting a couple of years ago.
Yeah, when Nickelodeon and those types of studios, I'll call them the newer studios versus like Disney and Warner, they established what's called like gallery programs. So you would have to apply as a gallery, be approved, and we were on all those major programs. A lot of them, the original art is just dried up. For example, SpongeBob, we had the first SpongeBob show ever of any gallery in the whole world. That was really fun. We premiered it. But the distributor kind of went bankrupt and the art dried up. They stopped doing sales and things like that. So a lot of things are it's hard coming in because there's all these nuances of like, what has cells, what doesn't, what has drawings, what doesn't, what was kept by the morgue, what wasn't. Like, it's easier to find a Snow White drawing from 1937 than a Jungle Book drawing from 1967, which logically in any other antique probably doesn't make any sense. You figure the older, the harder, but Disney didn't care back then. People could take them home, this, that, the other. They started figuring out, oh, we better lock these things up and use them. So it's really, really hard to find a Jungle Book drawing.
Yeah. So for your sake, how do you assign value on a Disney piece? What are some of the things that you evaluate to try to figure out what a piece or is worth, a drawing or a cell or anything?
This is a good question. Okay, so we look at things like the character. So in which film, right? So Cinderella, for example, is more popular than The Rescuers. We look at the characters. So Cinderella would have a higher value than one of the mice. We look at pose. Now, there are some galleries that subscribe to, must be full figure, eyes open, things like that. I personally have a different opinion. I think it's how the piece speaks to you. If Cinderella's like singing a song and her eyes are closed and you can feel everything, I think that's a wonderful pose. Then you have things that make a character more desirable. For example, Cinderella in the ball gown is more desirable than Cinderella in the regular clothes. And then which characters? Is she dancing with the prince? This or that? Certain scenes, did she just lose the slipper? Oh my goodness, holy grail for Cinderella. So you take a lot of those things into account. You also look at condition and where you're talking about certain interesting things about the market, if we're going to flip back to, say, Snow White, Pinocchio, the 30s, 40s kind of situation, is it a Courvoisier cell or is it not? Because Courvoisiers are most of those cells. So you also look at what is an anomaly for what's expected. So Courvoisier cells, for those who don't know, was a gallery in the 30s and 40s, mostly, where Disney hired them to basically sell the pieces through galleries, and they would trim almost all the characters. Snow White, not as much, but trim and apply the characters to these backgrounds. Some are wood grain, some are old wrapping paper, believe it or not, some are, beautiful woods and other scenes. So not all Courvoisier backgrounds are the same. But if we talk about the Simpsons, who are more new, having a trim cell from the Simpsons severely hurts its value, because there's loads and loads and loads that are not trimmed. So you have to look at, like, what's the norm and how does your piece compare to the norm. And what we do is, because people find us from all over the world on our website and they show us art, we give them ranges. We say, Dumbo, the right range for your piece, we believe, is X to Y, and they will give us feedback as to where they are. Because the general rule of thumb is, obviously, the lower it is, in theory, the faster it will sell. It's not a hard and fast rule, and the higher. And so people are like, hey, I got a mortgage to pay, I'm going to price this on the lower end. Other people like, I'm going to wait, so please price it on the higher end. And so we work together with the consigners to price the art, so everybody is on the same page. Everybody, is comfortable with where we're at.
Yeah. So
Did
that's
I cover
interesting,
that
because
for you?
yeah, well, with like the consignment, or when people reach out to you and they're looking to sell, so primarily, are you selling on their behalf and you take a commission, or do you buy cells and then try to find value, as in, you're going through eBays or you're going through auction sites or whatever it is, purchasing and then reselling? What do you prefer to do?
So I can do either. It really depends on what the person who owns the art wants to do. If we're buying things outright, we're offering a lower price because the risk transfers to us.
Right.
Right. If it's on consignment, the risk is with the owner. So the prices reflect that. So I can do either. When people show us, I don't use eBay very much, since you mentioned that. I don't use it as a barometer. I used to sell on it when it kind of was much newer. I had a number of unpleasant experiences on both sides. One, when I'd offer things for sale, I'd be very clear in our descriptions, and people, for some reason, give me grief about the shipping after they want something. I'm like, well, it's clearly there. Or my step uncle, or ex step uncle, is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman, and we were doing something at Comic-Con. It's like, hey, I'm going to be at Comic-Con with my uncle Kevin. If you want to get this signed, you just let me know if you buy it. And people were fighting with me how he wasn't my uncle. I'm like, I don't understand, so a lot of things like that. And on the buy side, I bought a Bambi piece one time. The pictures did not show the damage. When I got it, the piece was unsellable. It was so damaged. And so I personally don't take eBay. People ask crazy prices. I don't use that as a barometer. I use basically the 30 years of experience. Once in a while, we'll look at some auction sites if it's a piece that we haven't had in a long time, or we haven't really had before. Then we'll look at auction houses to get a sense. But these things are ranges. It's not like, okay, this is how much an iPhone is. All these things are one of a kind. So it's ranges. I think, sometimes if something's too low, it'll be sold right away. And if it's too high, it might sit there for a while.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And those type of experiences, do you primarily, when you post, look for, this is just the asking price, or do you ever do auctions? Because I've seen like different places, and I try to like search just certain things once in a while. For me, I don't particularly look for any given scene per se, but I have a list of, here's all the cells I want to own from all the shows I enjoyed when I was a kid. So I just want to have one of each, right? I just want to try to find one that means something to me, and that'll satisfy my my thirst. But here's the problem: I look forever. I'm scanning eBay all the time just to look for things. But then I've started looking at some of these different auction houses just out of curiosity, and I've never done the online auctions before. But there's someone has an estate sale, and you can go and bid online at some auction house for it or something like that. So I haven't had experiences that way with it, but I mean, there's so many different options to get cells for someone that's like me, who's only really used like an eBay. What are some of the other would you say, safer ways to purchase cells? So you're not finding yourself getting a damaged cell, or you're not finding yourself sending money to someone through PayPal and then they never send it or something like that.
Yeah, I hear you. We hear a lot of horror stories from collectors that have things happen. Well, I think the most important thing is to be dealing with someone where there's a return policy. So an issue with a lot of the auction houses, I hesitate to say all, but I think it's fair to say most for sure, is there's not really a return policy. And it's very as is. And a lot of them don't have expertise in animation. And so they just, sometimes things are misidentified, or they haven't opened it up out of the frame. I'll give you an example. So if you're buying, let's say, Disney drawings, which can be thousands of dollars, some of them, and it's in a frame. A lot of people get the art frame. There's nothing wrong with that. But what can happen is once you open it up, if you were to buy it in an auction and they didn't open up the frame, which I think most of them don't, maybe all, again, I hesitate to say all, but you get home, you open it up, it might be trimmed. There might be damage around the edge. It might have been, faded, and you can see a fade line or things like that. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but all those things affect the value. And so it's important that you know that you didn't pay the price based upon it being trimmed. I believe you likely paid the price upon it being in good shape. And so there's a lot of buyer beware stuff with auctions. I know of a client came to me for help because he bought a peanut strip. And I don't know if you're aware, but the peanut strips go for 20, 30, 50. I mean, that's 1,000. Those are serious numbers. And he bought a piece off eBay. It was a Xerox. He couldn't get his money back. And eBay was not interested in helping them. So it's very buyer beware. So I really suggest whomever you're dealing with that there's a good refund policy, but the refund policies can also, vary. So be clear on what is it you have to prove to return it. So for example, our gallery, we have a 7-day return policy. You get it, you just didn't like it for whatever reasons. We don't make you fight with us. You can return it to us. The only exception we have is if you're putting something on layaway, then we have a 20% non-refundable deposit on layaways because we have to, take payments over that. But if someone gets it's really unhappy, and they've been a good client, we're going to work with them. We're going to find a way to do something so that we can protect the consignor and still, have a happy client. And to be fair, we get less than one piece returned a year. And given that most of our business is over the internet, that's pretty good. I think it's because we work really hard to do strong condition descriptions. If there's paint cracking or this, we really describe everything really well. So there's a lot of buyer beware. I suggest buyers educate themselves. Do they really know what a color model cell is, what a series cell is, what a limited edition cell is? And so I hate when new collectors, with the excitement that you have, and I'll consider you on the newer side, they come in, they buy things and they didn't know what they bought. And it kind of sours them. And that's really a shame. So we work really hard at the gallery to educate people and make sure they understand what they're buying.
Wow. It's a couple of things you mentioned there. When I was looking at the auctions, I just assumed that if they're taking professional photographs of these things, that they would have a pretty good handle of what they're doing. So they wouldn't be able to hide blemishes or whatever, but you're so right about the frame and stuff. And something else. So I used this as an example before, the good old Ninja Turtle ones that when they sold them in bulk and it had like the mat around them.
Yeah.
They came in the special bag and or whatever. I don't know. They sold them at like KB Toys or whatever it was. I'm like, oh, this is great. When I get it, I'll be able to bring it home and, I'll take it out. I learned very quickly that when they sold them this way, they glued them to the mat. So you can't take the mat off without damaging the cell. So you have to leave it in the mat.
What a win.
But the one thing I was leading to here is that I learned that by going online, and other people have shared their experiences with it, which I'm very thankful for. So it seems like, at least with the internet, some of the issues that you have when you're buying or selling or whatever it is, some of them could be offset by just being able to learn a few new things. Because I never would have known that if I didn't have like a community of animation cell people that already posted about that.
Yeah.
So talk about the community. What has that done for the animation cell? I guess buying and selling. Has the community grown over the years, and have you learned things from them? I know you've contributed to them because you're doing videos like this, and I've seen you post on like the Facebook pages, but what's that community aspect to all of this that you've seen over the years?
That's interesting. I mean, the community, in the beginning, when I first started collecting, you basically, there was like maybe the odd convention or something. So you would see whoever you would see in person, and it was a lot smaller in that way. And you would see people, because they used to have, like Sotheby's and Christie's used to have auctions. So I
Hmm.
would go to those and I would see other dealers, some collectors, maybe meet some people. So those would happen a couple times a year. And that was kind of exciting. You'd go to New York, where I happened to live at the time, so that was easy. Or you come to
Hmm.
LA, where I now happen to live, so that was easy.
Yeah.
But people would fly in from all over and things like that. So there was, I think, more of a community in that you physically knew people, right? You had dinner with them, or you sat next to them at an auction, you knew them. Kind of when the internet came, things got really interesting, where in the olden days when I was collecting, you'd walk into a gallery and they had 50 pieces on the wall. There, you could have the perception there's only 50 pieces in the planet.
Hmm.
Your sense of supply and demand really was different. And then when the internet came, then people were like, oh my God, there's loads and loads of pieces. And so there was that kind of learning curve for collectors. And then online things started happening. I think the Facebook groups are somewhat newer.
Hmm.
Um, Again, I've always had, once the internet started, which was pretty much when I started the gallery, I have collectors from all over the world. Most of them I've never met.
Hmm.
Some of them only email, some of them on the phone, whatever the collector's preferences. So it's kind of scattered. And then Comic-Con, which I'm sure you've heard of. Have you ever been to
Have
Comic-Con?
not. No.
Comic-Con is very interesting. It's very exciting. It's very crowded. I had a booth at Comic-Con for years, and it was fun to meet a lot of our collectors in person. But the show morphed from, kind of like this mom and pop animation and comic book collector to be much more studio oriented. So we haven't gone in a long time because we feel like it just moved away from what, we were benefiting for.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of communities now are kind of online, and the Facebook groups are nice. People are very nice and respectful in the groups that I'm in.
Good.
And there's people who are considered quote unquote experts like myself that, people will ask questions. And if I have expertise in the area, I'll help them. I think it's a nice thing to do. There's other people, I'm not the only one, that will help people identify things, or how to frame things, or how to store things, a whole thing like that. And so I really enjoy the Facebook groups that I'm a part of, because some of my clients are on there, other dealers I know, other, super high-end collectors who say lend to museums, people that were on my radar, but I haven't talked to in years,
Hmm.
because they just weren't buying right now or whatever. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I really enjoy going on those groups almost daily. Even if I don't post, I do like seeing what's on there, and it's very pleasant.
Yeah. Well, I've heard that Disney cells are the most forged. Have you ever came across a forgery, and how could you tell it was forged?
Um, I believe I've seen forgeries, not often, to be
Okay.
fair. It's hard. What happens is, your eye gets trained to look for certain things. And so every once in a while, a piece, you run across a piece and you're just like, that just doesn't look right,
Hmm.
and so it's hard for me to tell you 100% that's fake. But if it doesn't look right, we just kind of stay away. We just write the person, we say, it just doesn't look on model to us. We don't
Okay.
say, oh, that's fake, because that, is a
Never know.
tricky thing to kind of say.
Hmm.
Um, there is a Facebook group or somebody, a a collector friend of mine, has created, that posts about, some fakes. A lot of times they're found in these like smaller auctions,
Hmm.
where they don't have the expertise, right? Maybe an estate auction where they don't really know animation. They're just
Yeah.
kind of taking on someone's word. Then someone trips over and thinks, oh, I found this, but I think it's kind of on purpose. So it's hard. I don't see a lot, but it's more things just don't look on model. And as I said, we stay away from them. And that's where I think you do get, like, buying from galleries does give you a certain level of insurance, if you like, and protection.
Hmm.
I know that some of our clients, they know about all the auctions, but they won't buy from them. They would rather buy from us, knowing that they have that level where we have a lifetime certificate of authenticity. if they get it, they're unhappy with it. Because a lot of these auctions, you're not going there in person inspecting it. And as I said, you buy it, even if they didn't show all the damage, it's yours.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, buyer beware. Whereas with us and other galleries, we're not the only one, if you get it, you're like, hey, now that I see it in front of me, I don't really like it, send it back.
Wow. I know cards have a grading system where there's multiple sites where you can send them your card and they'll grade it, and it's used to help assess value in some ways, if it's more rare, if it's perfectly mint or whatever. Is animation cells, drawings, is it just too arbitrary? It's like too much of it's the eye of the beholder, or do you think there's some sort of way to assess the condition of a cell preliminarily? Because you talked about some of the things that you look for when it comes to assess value. Do you think there's anything? Do you think there's any value in, like, because you're saying with the forgeries, there's a way for you to tell and authenticate. Is there any way for any individual to do it other than screen matching, so that they can sell with confidence that, like if I go onto eBay, I might not know the difference. If you just stumble upon something and be like, okay, here's what it is, you claim what it is, and then the buyer's upset because they get it and they're like, no, this is definitely fake, and now you have a dispute because you didn't know any better as a seller. Can any average seller be able to do this on their own if they don't have 30 years of experience?
Well, I guess to a certain degree. So when you're talking about screen matching and screen grabbing, that gets tricky because the phrasing, we're very specific with our phrasing in terms of production. Production art was any art used in the production. So
Right.
that includes concept art, storyboards, edited scenes. They're still production, but they're not. What you're referring to is called under the camera.
Okay.
So if I have here, I'll just pick a piece.
Oh, we get to see it now. All right. Let's see what we got.
This is an original Kawase setup from Brave Little Tailor, and this is in my collection. And this is when we talk about like scene, you got both Mickey and Minnie kissing. Like, this is a very, very strong representation of a cell. And the background is pretty cute. It's not, there's wood grains and other things. So this is a really nice cell. So if you're going to watch the film and try and match it, I'll say that again because my back was turned, and try and match that, you may or may not be able to. One, it may be edited, and sometimes it's not a perfect science. Sometimes, you're trying on those DVDs, sometimes it just jumps, things like that. So you can't necessarily match it. So we have a rule over a certain price. We will look through it and do the screen grab and show you. We can't do it for every SpongeBob cell, Scooby-Doo cell. It's just not worth, the time. And when we say production, that covers us, and I do think, though, newer collectors mix up production and under the camera. I definitely see that happen a lot.
So, one other thing, so that what you've showed me, I've seen that before, and I want to say that it might have been a replica. People sell replicas, and they'll, you'll notice them online, or like, okay, they take whatever, and they try to make it sound like it's an animation cell, but then you read the description and they're like, it's a copy, or here's something from a book or whatever it is. Does that bother you, that maybe, because it's so funny, I have seen that out there, that people may be taking something that you own and using it as a way to sell a ripoff? Because I would be afraid, as the original owner, someone that holds this physical piece, that it would lessen its value if there's just a bunch of copies of it out there.
Okay, that's a multi-level question. All right, so there is a seller on Etsy that is making, for lack of a better word, I think Xeroxes.
Yeah.
And their title doesn't seem to really say what it is. When you dig deeper, it does. That, I believe, is actually violating copyright law with Disney. So I'm surprised Disney's not gone after them. That really bothers me, because that's someone with a Xerox machine Xeroxing. There's no art. It's very misleading. It's creating a lot of confusion. Now, those things I don't know how much they sell for, but I think they're $10, $20, $50,
Right.
That this piece I'm showing you, is closer to like 10,000 kind of, so I think that people who are buying $10,000 pieces are not going to get tricked. But again, this is what can leave a bad taste in a new collector's mouth. They don't know. They don't know things are 10,000 or 5,000 or $5. You come in, you just don't know, hey, this is cool. I didn't know this existed. This is exciting. And when they think they bought something and they get something else, it just sours them on the whole collecting thing. And that is what I hate the most, is anyone getting confused or duped. And that's why it doesn't exist anymore. But for a long time, I was the only person writing regular animation collecting columns. I used to write for a UK magazine called Collectibles, and I focus heavily on educating people, because I've had many people over the years call me. I remember when I first started 30 years ago, and someone calling me is like, I have a Steamboat Willie cell. I was like, oh my God, I don't think anyone's ever found one. I was so excited. I couldn't believe it. Had a serious cell.
Oh yeah.
That he bought from the Disney store.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's not right. He should know what he's buying. So I went into the Disney store, and they're very nice there. They don't really sell the animation anymore. And this was when I first started collecting. They explained it to me in such a way that I was convinced. I had a hand-painted background done by the Bambi animator. I did this. Again, this is when I first started. I'm mixing up my stories, but this is when I first started collecting. Actually, it was before that. I had the gallery, and I bought 2 pieces, and they were $5,000 together. It was a lot of money. Oof. Because they worded things very carefully. I wouldn't go so far to say that they lied, but they worded it in a way that I heard something different than they were saying. And I think they knew it. And so I returned the pieces. I was very upset. And I was like, I never want anyone who buys from me to have this experience. So I've kind of made it my mission to it. And if someone wants a limited edition cell, I'm all for it, as long as you know what you're buying. If someone wants a series cell, I'm all for it, as long as you know what you're buying. I'm good. If someone comes in and goes, I want unlimited, I've been looking for the spaghetti scene for 20 years from Lady and the Tramp, I can't find one, I want the limited, I'm going to sell it to you, as long as that's what you want.
Right. Yeah, I've seen that too. I've done some because I'm going through a bunch of my old bins from when I was a kid and selling like baseball cards and hockey cards or whatever. And I've been selling some on eBay and some on Macari. And Macari is just flooded with the replica stuff that's the Xerox copy. And I look at it and I think, oh man, do the people that are buying this actually think they're getting something authentic, when the description doesn't make it clear? They call it animation cells, but when you read the description, it says it's a copy. Do they really know? Or if it's buried in there, they don't understand, because they see the picture of it and they're like, oh, look, it's a character I love. And then they're spending $15 on something that a person doesn't even have the rights to replicate. I mean, they're doing it illegally. I'm 100% certain they are. There's no way that anyone would have given them permission to reproduce their original artwork. And it's too good to not be someone that actually did it themselves, as in it's their own, interpretation of the art. It's definitely just a complete copy ripoff of it. And I hate seeing that, because that's what it floods the markets with. And I think that kind of waters down things.
It really upsets me. And that's where the internet has really made that happen a lot. And unfortunately, I and others, report these things, and the sites don't care. The eBays and the Etsy's and the whatevers don't care.
Yeah. Hey, can I see some more of your examples? And another quick thing, because you said you have young kids. These are out of their reach when you're like, these are in like safe storage. You don't leave these in your daughter's room or whatever and just like hope they don't play with them.
Correct. I keep them safe. Okay, don't you worry none.
They're showing them off to your friends and stuff. Hey, look at this.
So these are all pieces of my own collection. I happen to love this scene of Pongo.
Tilt it a little bit. Let's see there. That's a little bit. I'll hold the other way.
That's some reflection here. Let me take it out of the.
Oh.
Maybe this is better.
It's starting to focus a little bit. Almost there. There you go.
Got it?
That's better. Oh, okay. Look at that.
So this is what's referred to as a Disneyland cell setup. Disneyland sold them decades ago, and they put them in these mats and this gold sticker on the back. Often things have been taken out of the mat, and that's completely fine. But this is giving you an insight. What I really love is I like collecting super cute, super villainy, or super naked Simpsons. We'll get to that in a minute. And I hesitate what that says about me. I'm a little scared for a psychologist to tell me.
Oh, wow. That is so cool. And
So
that's from the
this,
original one, the
the
101
Dalmatians is
Dalmatians.
original. Everything I'm showing you today is original.
Yeah.
And
No, I
so
mean like from the
this,
first movie I meant. Yeah. The artwork
yeah,
in that
from
first movie was
61,
so
1961.
beautiful. All right,
So
let's
this is
yeah.
a queen drawing. I'm trying to get it for you. From 1937,
Mm,
Snow White. And so when you were talking earlier about what makes something valuable, another thing that I can mention is how often is someone in the movie, right? The queen is not in the movie very long. She turns into the witch and then it's witch. So finding queens is really hard. And guess what? Queen with the heart box, ta-da, major scene. And queen with a great face, right?
mm.
Really good glare. And look at all these notes. If you can kind of see the
Yeah,
writing.
that is so cool.
So this is a pretty serious piece from Snow White.
Wow. That
You want to
is
see more?
great fun. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
This is so fun. I love seeing these. This is so cool.
Well, if you're ever in LA, I will absolutely blow your mind. This is a Hanna-Barbera set of storyboards. And the reason I chose this piece is it just shows you something different. You can see you got the 9 drawings per page.
Wow. That is cool.
And this goes through the whole cartoon. So I could see how someone's not, for example, oh, I want to decorate a baby's room, a young kid's room. This is probably not the piece they're picking,
Mhm.
but as someone who's more of a seasoned collector, this is pretty exciting. So for example, here's another page from it. And so this goes through the whole cartoon.
Wow.
So to
So
me, this is very exciting piece.
do you know so the artist that would draw the storyboard, is that different than the artist that would draw for the actual cells? So I understand there's a line drawer and there's all kinds of different artists that go into this. Is there just do you know if there's just specific storyboard artists and that's all they work on, or are they also working on the production of the cartoon itself?
The cells and the drawings are pretty much done differently. For example, in Disney, you had they called them the ink and paint ladies
Mm-hmm.
mostly. Whereas the Disney's 9 Old Men, they were doing the drawings
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. So, Art Babbitt and all those guys, they're doing the actual drawings. And then they did like the key drawings. And then in between our animators would do. So they do like the extremes of the movements, which were
Mm-hmm.
considered, say, the harder drawings. And then the in-betweeners do that. And so on drawings, let me see if the queen's a key. Yes. So another great thing for this drawing is it's a key. So look here at these numbers here. Can you see?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's hard to see. That's a key. And so this will show you like the top and the bottom of the extreme movements. And then the number, this is taped, so I don't want to take it out, but the number will match the number on the bottom. And so the keys are the head animators. So those have more value.
I think I've seen, maybe I gotta make sure I get the terminology right, but I once bought it was the animation of X-Men book. Someone put a collection together and they showed how they lay out the scenes, and it almost looks like a ledger. And it's like, here's frame by frame, and we're trying to space it out so we get the full half-hour episode. And it would be marked that way. Like we have to just get the movements right because it doesn't want to be too fast or too slow. And you have to get really good at timing. Is that what the numbers are referring to? They're trying to time it out? Or am I getting the terminology wrong?
I think that's a different thing. I think those are the sheets that look like a lot of lines and timing. This is more like the movement and the time between. If it's shorter, it's meant to be like a little quicker and things like that. This is it's related. It's related to what you're saying, but I think it's more micro, where yours is a macro.
Gotcha.
It's like these mini movements, if you like. And so since I promised you naked Simpsons, I want to deliver good on my promise.
So Homer.
I have a naked Burns. I have another naked Homer. It's, the naked Burns, I don't think they appeared naked on screen, but I love the Simpsons. We probably have sold more original Simpson cells than anyone in the world. I love the show. I know what we're doing in the art, and when I see a naked one, I apparently have
It's
to keep it for myself.
so that's your thing. In the sense that certain people have, like, for me, if I see something with a radio in it, because I'm in the industry, I'm like, I want to buy that because there's a radio in it. So certain people have collections based on certain things that are in it. And for you, it's the Simpsons nude scenes.
It's a little disturbing, I admit.
Well, The
So
Simpsons. Oh yeah.
we got a couch gag here. And so at the beginning of the Simpsons episodes, you know how they have the couch gags?
Yeah.
So this is one such, and this is based off the Brady Bunch.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
I snapped this up, and this has been my collection for decades.
Wow. How many cells are in there? I guess sheets. Is that
One, let's see. I don't think it's taped together,
Mhm.
but I think it's just a couple.
Yeah, I see. I'm
I
always
think
curious
they
too.
painted this all
Like
versus have them move. I think they had them move together.
sometimes I don't know. Like you can look at it and you think things would be on different cells, but sometimes they share them, sometimes they don't. I haven't really cracked the code to understand when they make that decision of to have a separate cell or not, as in they're just going to animate one thing separately.
It happens a lot based upon how they're animating the scene.
Mhm.
So if Homer's just standing there and he's blinking his eyes, you don't need a bunch of bodies.
Right.
You're good with a bunch of blinky eyes,
Right.
for example. So it depends on how much movement. And some studios did it more on the cheap than others. Like if you watch some anime, it's more jerky because they have fewer cells,
Yeah.
per second. And this is a couch gag with Matt in it,
Oh wow.
signed by Matt. I got it signed by Matt.
Wait, was that used? Is that an actual used on the TV show?
I believe so.
Wow.
So I'm pretty excited. I don't think Matt would recognize me now, but for a while he used to call me the gallery chick when he'd run into me at Comic-Con. And I was once waiting for the elevator next time. I used to have the ringtone of The Simpsons. So did Matt. My phone rang. I went to pick it up and Matt grabbed his phone. I was like, and he's like, gallery chick, So he never knew my real name, but I'll take gallery chick from Matt. Like, I'll take that.
Oh, that is so cool. Man, Simpsons have, well, of course, a lot of fanaticism because it's been on forever and it's got such a huge fan base, multi-generational fan base. But there's always Simpson cells being sold, and they seem to, I don't know what the pricing on them, if they've always stayed the same, but they seem to always be one of the higher end cells you can get.
For Simpsons?
Yeah.
Couch gags, you said?
Or any of them, like any of the Simpson cells. I mean, some I've seen just like, one or two characters on it, but then you see these, 4 or 5 cell setups and things. Very collectible. And there's always bids and people have a lot of, there's going to be interest in it if you're selling one. There's always that interest in Simpsons.
Mostly. I mean, again, the same rules apply. Do you have a very rare character? Do you have the whole family together? Do you have a couch gag? Some episodes are more popular than others. That's where, to a certain degree, our expertise comes in. There's just some episodes where you're like, amazing episode.
Yeah.
And the couch gags generally go for the highest by far.
Yeah, that is cool. I just bought my first Simpson cell from another collector, and over in the UK, there's a lot of people that sell overseas and stuff, but I guess it's Britain. I don't even. I always, if you say it the wrong way, they always want to correct you. But
it's okay.
Yeah, and it's a lower end one. It's definitely not too exciting in that sense, but I've always wanted one, so I feel like I can check that off my box now. But then it puts you in the like, I want more. It's like it's hard to sometimes limit yourself once you start finding things you like.
Oh, well, I'm right there with you. I have a couple hundred pieces in my collection, so I'm not exactly one to lecture on restraint in the animation collecting world. I think, what can also happen too is you're like, I want a Simpsons, and you bought one. And then later down the road, you find one that appeals to you more and you end up selling the other one. That can happen also.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think we've covered a lot here. Is the one thing I think we haven't covered is there anything you want buyers to know from a seller's standpoint, a seller's understanding of what goes on? Because there's two different ways to look at it. I guess as one as a consumer and one as someone that's giving or selling to the consumer. What is On the other end, what do you want people to know about the seller's experience that they may not know?
Ooh, what a question. Hold on.
Mhm.
That's a good. Um, from the sellers. I think, well, for us, maybe I can answer it this way. The way that it's most enjoyable for us to work with people are people that are communicative with us so that we can help them the best we can. Let us know, what you're looking for, what's important to you, any glitches you have. And usually, we get some people that will just write us, ask us a question like, what's your layaway policy? And
Hmm.
we answer them. And then they never, or I'm really interested in this piece, what's the deposit? We answer them, they never answer back. Like, to me, it would be nice if people at least said, oh, thank you, I can't afford it, or something, so they close the loop for us. Because otherwise we have all these open loops
Oh
that
yeah.
we're, and I'll ask, you know, my archivist, hey, where we're at this, and the other, checking on these people that were very interested. So to me, it's nice if people can just communicate, with us.
Okay.
Um, and I would say the more information they give us in the beginning, the more we can help them get the pieces, they want. If they can tell us price ranges they're comfortable in, what are their collecting goals, things like that, then we'll point them in the right direction. And I understand some people are hesitant. They don't want to say 5,000. They think I'm going to mark up everything to 5,000. It's not how we work. And I understand that hesitation, but people come in and go, oh, I want, a Mary Blair. And then we spend a lot of time looking for them. And they're like, oh, I thought they were $1,000. I mean, these things are, $20,000, $30,000. So like, we have to find a way that we're not wasting our time or your time, and still respecting that people want to keep some cards close to their chest. So it's kind of like, help us help you by giving us, the information.
Right. That's interesting. So that's good feedback, because I think a lot of times there's probably do's and don'ts. Do's, do communicate and say, "Ooh, that might be above my price point, but thank you anyway." That's a good tip, because I think some people are just afraid to do that. I don't know if they feel like they don't need to, or they don't want to upset the seller in the sense that they're afraid they'll be offended by saying it's out of what they thought the range would be. So if the do's are communicate, what are the don'ts? What are things you don't want people to do when they reach out to you?
Don't want to do. Um, don't be rude, although it
Mhm.
happens very rarely. It happened a lot more when we were on eBay. Um, it's
What do
hard.
you think about like super low balls? They'll say, "Oh, I can only give you a couple $100 for that," and it's like a multi-$1,000 piece.
Yeah. Okay, I could put that as a don't. We work really hard to price things fairly at our gallery. And once in a while, yeah, a consignor will consider an offer. But if something's a couple $1,000s, it's never going to go for a couple hundred. If it
Mhm.
was supposed to be a couple hundred, that's where I would have priced it in the first place.
Right.
You know, um, yeah, that happens, and certainly like with us, if something's a brand new release, we have an obligation to the consignor to show it, at that price that they wanted for their
Mhm.
piece. And so if we had something for quite a while, maybe they have flexibility. Some people do, some people don't, as long as people are, polite about it and things like that. But it would be good for people to understand that, like, in the initial release, our hands are tied. We have an obligation to our consignor to do that. And so a lot of people, once they realize that, they'll pay, the price rather than risk losing it for a couple
Mhm.
$100s, because that's definitely happened for people. Like, oh, I'll wait, I'll see what happens. Maybe I can get it for a couple $100s cheaper. Guess what? The thing sold immediately and they're kicking themselves. So I think it's up to and people want to pay a fair price. Nobody wants to feel like they overpaid. But I think it's about, find your comfort level and maybe think about, hey, for a couple $100s, am I going to kick myself
Yeah.
if I don't get this? And if the answer is I'm willing to risk it, then risk it. If the
Yep.
answer is no, I want this piece, then buy the piece. Don't, because I can remember a Bambi I didn't buy because at the time it felt expensive to me. And 30 years later, I don't have that Bambi and I am not happy.
You have this giant collection. You have so many cool pieces. It's the one that got away, the
I got Bambi
rosebud.
envy. I've got
Yeah.
Bambi envy.
All right, let me tell you one thing I do, and you can tell me if this is a do or don't. And if you tell me to stop doing this, I will stop doing it, and I mean this. So sometimes I'll see things online, and I'll think this is one of the coolest pieces I've ever seen. I'll message the seller with no intention of buying, and I'll just specifically say, "This is so cool. You got such an awesome piece. I just want to let you know how awesome this is, and thank you for posting it." And that's all I'll do, and with no intention Am I wasting sellers' times, or should I stop doing that?
Is this a gallery? Is this like a normal person? Is this?
Anywhere where I'll see it. Sometimes it's mostly on eBay. So you can just contact seller if you see something you like. And I'll say, dude, this is awesome. I don't know how you got it, but it's so cool. Love the piece. Thank you for posting it. I had fun
I
looking at
think
it.
that's a nice thing to do. That makes someone feel good. I guess it depends on, the receiver. If someone wrote that to me, I would like that. And I would go, thank you very much. We get emails like that from time to time in the gallery, which with people that can't necessarily afford the art that we have, but they're like, I really enjoyed it. Or, I wrote about this in my paper for school or something.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's always kind of cute. We've had tours come to the gallery of, kids and other folks, kind of just no intention of buying, just, want to come appreciate the art. That's always fun. Treat it like a mini museum if you like. I think that people would appreciate. I have to imagine if it's someone that's, a super eBayer and loads of things. So I was like, oh, that's not a sale. That would like maybe annoy them because they're like, that's not a sale. Email,
Right.
leave me alone. I definitely think people who are collectors would love it. You
Yeah.
know, I think people who are selling it who love what they do, like me, and collectors would appreciate those comments. I think people
Yeah.
who see it more as a business probably don't. I think that's my best answer for you.
I like a good story. As you can tell, we're doing this. I like a good, so, who knows? Maybe there could be a good story behind it. Okay. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that we should? And of course, people should check out your website and what you have. Where can they go?
They can go to wwagallery.com and look around. What I would recommend people do a lot of is sign up for a mailing list if you're comfortable doing that, because a lot of the art we get in, we email first to the mailing list. So a lot of the art that we get in sells before it even gets to the website. So if you're just looking on the website, you might be missing things. And again, to communicate, if you're looking for naked Homer Simpson, let us know. We get one in, we'll send it to the naked Homer Simpson list. If you're looking for Cinderella in the ball ground, let us know. You're liking that, huh?
You do not have a specific list for naked Homer Simpson.
You
Do
know,
not, do you?
how could I not?
No.
So I just think, the more you communicate with us, the more we can help you. And sometimes, people, as I said, they want to hold their cards close to their chest and build some trust. And we respect that. But the more you tell us, the more you get on the Jungle Book list and you get on the Mary Blair list. And when we get those in, you get a shot at it. If you always want to Mary Blair, but we don't know, you're not going to know.
Yeah.
Okay. If you see
Well,
what I mean.
I got to say, this was a lot of fun and very informative. I think there's going to be a lot of people that get something out of it. Thank you so much for doing this today. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And if you ever wanted to have me back, I'd be delighted to do that.
Big thumbs up to Debbie. She did a fantastic job. I learned a lot from her. And I think we're going to learn a lot from all of our guests in the future when we talk animation cells. Thank you for watching this one. There's going to be more to come soon. We'll see you later.